Hello everyone, this is Professor Gant, and I am making this video so that you can have somewhat of an idea on what you need to do for your first LASA project. Um, the way that this course is designed, we do not have homework modules, well, homework assignments for modules 3 and 5. You have projects instead. And so what I'm going to do is sort of give you an idea of how to do the calculation part for your project so that you'll have an idea of what to put in your report. With that being said, I'm not going to go over how to write your report per se, like line by line, because that's what you need to do, and you all are college students, so I know that you all can write a paper. Um, what I'm going to do is just kind of let you know how to do this project, where these calculations come from, and kind of give you the flow of what the rubric is looking for as far as when you do this assignment, how I'm going to grade you, okay? So if you follow what I tell you here, and of course you write your paper using APA format and all that good stuff, then you shouldn't have a problem making a good grade on this particular project. So the first project, or LASA project, or LASA number one, is about analysis of credit card debt. And so the idea of this project is to kind of have you learn about how interest is calculated on a credit card, and then from that, have you go through actually doing the calculations using a credit card that you may have. If you don't have a credit card, then you can make up one. And the example that I'm going to use is like a credit card that I had, and of course you'll see some charges on there. And so I try to keep it as real as possible, so that you'll get an idea of what you see on your credit card statements and how to take that information and put it into this project here. Okay. If you don't have a credit card, then that's fine. You can just make up some numbers, but you kind of use mine as a guide, but don't do the same thing that I did. Okay. All right. So this says that credit card debt is a reality for many in today's world, and we want to suppose that we have this $5,270 balance on a credit card, and our APR is 15.53%. And I think for most credit cards, they're probably, regular credit cards sitting at 13 or more. So this is kind of realistic. We want to consider the following questions and prepare a report based upon your conclusions. And this report must be submitted as a Word document, and submitted inside of the Module 3 assignment to Dropbox. So I cannot accept an email. I need to accept it this way so that I can grade it via the rubric. Okay. If you send it to me via email, that's fine, but just know that you're also going to have to upload it in the Dropbox inside of my virtual campus here for me to be able to actually count. Now, question number one here, I'm just going to skip all this other stuff. Question number one here says that most credit cards require that you pay a minimum monthly payment of 2% of the balance. And that's pretty standard. I know for some credit cards, the minimum is 3%, but most normal ones, unless you have some kind of affinity card, let's say like American Express or something like that, then it's normally 2%. So it says, based upon the balance, we need to calculate what would the minimum payment be if we had this balance. Okay. Second thing says we need to consider the minimum payment we just calculated and determine the amount of interest and the amount that was applied due to the principal. So every time you make a payment, a portion of that payment goes towards paying off the interest that you owe. And then, of course, that comes out first. And then the remaining portion actually goes and gets applied to your balance to bring your balance down, so that the next time when you make a payment, you have a little less going towards interest and a little more going towards bringing down your principal, okay, or your balance here. And so it's asking what should that be. Now, after we do 1 and 2, then part 3 says here, we want to consider one of your credit cards. Again, if you do not have a credit card, then make up some numbers based upon the example I'm going to show. If you do have a credit card, then you want to get one of your credit card statements and use the information that I'm going to show you in the example that I'm going to do to come up with this information here. So it says, what is your balance? What is the minimum monthly payment? How is the minimum monthly payment determined? So in other words, you need to figure out from your particular credit card, are they using the 2% rule for minimum monthly payment? Or are they using the 3% rule? Or are they using something else? You need to figure that out. We want to know how much of your minimum payment goes towards interest, how much of it goes towards principal. So here, if you know how to do step 2 here, then you know how to do this portion of step 3. If you do not want to share actual balance or do not have a credit card, like I said before, you can use an imaginary credit card balance. Now, part 4 says, now that we've done that, examine the terms of one of your credit cards or other revolving credit. So what we mean by terms is things like, do you have to pay an annual fee to have that card? Or what is your late fee if you make a payment late? What is the cash advance fee? Stuff like that, okay? And so in the example that I'm going to show you, you'll see that most of the things that are pertaining to what they're asking for here, I list that out, okay? So once we provide all that information here, it says, are there other charges that the credit card company is applying? Of course, we're going to list all those. And are you receiving a special rate for a limited time? So for instance, if you have a credit card that you get it and you're saying, hey, if you do balance transfers, you get 0% for, let's say 6 months or something like that. Let us know those things. Does your annual card charge an annual service charge? Okay. Or an inactive fee. So, of course, the annual service charge is like with most affinity cards, like American Express. If you know anyone that has one, then they have to pay a fee to have that card every year. If you do not use your card frequent enough, some credit card companies will charge you a fee because you didn't use it. Okay, because remember, they're giving you the card so they can make money off of you via the interest. If you're not using the card, they can't make any money off of interest. So they're going to that an inactivity fee is just the bare minimum that they expect to get off of any credit card that they issue out. And so they some credit cards make you pay that. Now, number 5 says we want to examine a credit card bill or other revolving debt to see how long it will take for you to pay off your debt if you only paid the minimum. Okay. You could use this online calculator, but we know if you have current credit card statements by law, I think, and this was enacted when our last president, President Barack Obama, was in office. He made this something that was mandatory to have that actually on the statement to say, hey, if you only pay the minimum payment, it'll take this long for you to pay it off. Okay. Now, the second part of step 5 says here, what steps could you take to pay off this credit card or debt sooner? Okay. Determine the percentage of principal that you will need to pay down in order to pay off the credit card in the time frame of your choosing. So that is an open-ended question. I know personally how I do this sort of thing is, let's say if I have a $5,000 balance and I know I want to pay it off in a year, I just take the 5,000 and divide it by 12. And of course, if I take 5,000 divided by 12, I get like roughly $417. And what I'll do is I'll just pay that each month until, I pay it off. Now, what they're asking is what if I'm going to do $416 or $417, what percentage of that actual balance is that? So in other words, $416 is what percent of 5,000? Okay, and so we need to make that calculation. I'll go ahead and do it right now. So $416 is roughly like 8.32%. And if I went up and rounded up to $417, that's about 8.34%. Okay, so not much difference there. So this is what step 5 is asking about. Step 6, it says many Americans find themselves amassing large amounts of credit card debt and other revolving debt at an early age. What advice do you have in using credit cards and the fees they charge? Would you provide a young adult planning on getting a credit card? So again, that's an open-ended question. As long as what you write actually makes some sense, I'm fine with it. Okay, but that's an open-ended question. The answers that you give, there is no wrong answer. It's just asking for your advice. Now, this is what the project is about. So what I'm going to do now is show you an example of what I did for the calculation part of this, as well as give you some tips on what I think you need to do as far as framing the paragraphs to have your paper flow the way that it needs to. Okay. Now, in saying this, the calculations that I've done them by hand, and I'm going to show you a PDF version of that. I encourage you to take the calculations that you've done, that you will do for this project, and get them into electronic form. You can use an app called Cam Scanner, or you could just take pictures and let's say insert the pictures into Word and kind of save that at the end of the document, put it in the appendix. I just need to be able to see your calculations because part of what I'm grading you on is, did you do these calculations and did you do them correctly? Okay. All right, so we're going to switch gears here, and I am going to go over the example that I've done to kind of help you understand where all this stuff comes from and how you can see all this come together. Okay, so the document that I have to the right is my handwritten overview of how I think this should be done calculation-wise. And so I'll start off by saying below is an overview of how to go about the calculations for this project. After performing the calculations based on your situation, prepare a report based on your conclusions. And your report should be at least 3 paragraphs long. And I'm suggesting that for the first paragraph, you put information addressing questions 1 and 2, or parts 1 and 2. Second paragraph needs to have parts 3 and 4 in it, and the third paragraph needs to have parts 5 and 6. Okay. Now, of course, you want to, have an introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph as well, since you're trying to write this in paper form. So make sure that you do that as well. But the meat of your paper needs to have these 3 paragraphs in it, and they need to address these parts of this project. Okay. Now, I say here to make sure that you submit your assignment in the Unit 3, Module 3, Assignment 2 Dropbox, as I've said before. And all your calculations need to be attached as well. And if you can just make that an electronic document that's in the appendix of your paper, have everything all together, that would be great. Now for part 1, here it says for part 1, how do we calculate what's going to be 2% of 5,270? Well, we just take 2% of balance, which is just 0.02 in decimal form, and multiply that times 5,207. So it ends up being $105.40. So if we had this balance of $5,270, then of course our minimum monthly payment based upon that 2% rule would be $105.40. Okay. Now, let me move this up here. So for part 2, remember it says considering minimum payment you just calculated, determine the amount of interest that would be applied. Now, here we know that there are 3 basic types of interest calculating methods when we talk about credit cards. We have what's called the previous balance method, adjusted balance method, and the average daily balance method. And more than likely, your credit card, if you do have a personal credit card, is going to use the average daily balance method. Okay, just letting you know that. Now, if we go on to the next page here, move this down. All right, I had to adjust the viewing window here. We have here, since we have no other info, we'll assume that the balance on this card uses the previous balance method. So I'm just using this as an example, okay? So the previous balance method uses the simple interest formula, which is I equals PRT, where I is going to be the interest accrued, meaning how much interest we have to pay. P is going to be the balance from the previous month. R is going to be the annual interest rate. And of course, T here is time in years. And since we're only doing interest for 1 month, we would just use time as being 1/12. Okay. And so here the assumptions here is our previous balance is $5,270. Interest rate is 15.53%, which is 0.1553 as a decimal. And we just plug in all that information here. Amount of interest charge would be 5,270 times the 0.1553 times 1/12, and we end up getting roughly $68.20. Okay. Now, the part that's important to us is that here we need to figure out what portion of our $105, I believe it's like 40 cents payment, is going to go towards the principal and what's going to go towards interest. Well, we know that out of the $105.40, $68.20 goes towards interest. So that's what the bank or the credit card company gets, okay? And so if we subtract that from the $105.40, then we see that only $37.20 actually goes on the principal balance to bring this balance here down, okay? So as you can see, because the credit card company is the one that's lending you money, they're getting a lion's share of your payment. And that's part of the reason why it takes so long if you just do minimum payments for your balance to be paid off, because they're taking so much of it up front. And so that's part of why we have this assignment, so that you can realize that. Now, here, so if we see everything, out of the $105.40 payment, $68.20 goes to interest, $37.20 goes toward paying off the principal. Okay. Now, part 3. This says consider one of your credit cards, and they want to know how much is the balance, what's the minimum monthly payment determined, what would the minimum monthly payment be, how much of the minimum monthly payment goes towards interest, all that good stuff. So here from this particular business credit card that Professor Blow Joe had, here's the information that comes off of that statement here. So your previous month's balance was $5,525.95. The credit card for this was 10.24. The billing cycle is 31 days, and that's important to know. The method of calculating balance and interest is the average daily balance method. And I'm stating this because this is actually stated on your credit card statement. So they have to tell you how they're calculating the interest here. Okay. Balance before interest is applied, that is calculated by doing whatever the previous balance is minus whatever payments that you made plus your new charges. Okay. And as you can see here, your previous monthly balance made some payments. Then the result here is a net positive. So that means that I had more charges than payments or credits. Okay. The estimated minimum monthly payment is 2% of whatever the balance is. The payments or credits that that they had on this particular card here is $6,043.65. The new charges were $6,286.49. So you can see, even though I paid off a lot here, there's actually more charges that I made. There are no current fees. And the balance subject to the actual interest rate is going to be the $6,545.21. And so all these things that I've listed here are actual things that are stated on your credit card statement. So it makes it real easy to do these calculations if you know where to pull from. So looking here, you'll see that estimated minimum monthly payment is going to be 2% of this balance. And if you notice, the balance that I'm referring to here is the balance before interest is applied, okay? Because they need to figure out what to calculate the actual interest on, or calculate the interest from. And so it's this balance before interest is applied. So if you want to know what balance you need to use, it's that one, okay? And of course, for here, it's approximately $115.38. And from here, since we know that we need to take a portion of this payment and put it towards interest, portion of it, put it towards the principal, we need to figure out what is what. But we have to figure out what interest is actually going to be charged first. So we were told that we use the average daily balance method here. And I state below how we actually calculate the average daily balance method, okay? So average daily balance method is done by taking this same formula, I equals PRT, but of course I is going to be the interest, but P is actually going to be the sum of all your credit card balances during your billing cycle and divided by the number of days of your billing cycle. And so this is why I was saying that your billing cycle here, the number of days, it is important. Because if your credit card has a 30-day, or I know I have a credit card that has a 28-day billing cycle, then of course, if it has a 28 billing cycle, then your average daily balance here is going to be higher than if I had a 31-day billing cycle. So those little small things do count in the long run, okay? So we're taking all of our daily balances each day from the first day of your billing cycle to the last day. You're taking all those amounts, adding them up, and then dividing by the number of billing cycle days you have, okay? Of course, R is going to be your annual interest rate, which for me was like 10.24 on this card. And the time is going to be the number of days in the billing cycle divided by 365. And of course, we know that we have roughly 365 days in a year. So we're figuring out the number of years by doing it in days in this sense, okay? And so here I'm just stating below that this balance subject to interest rate, if you're using the average daily balance method here, you'll see this value for P. But what you want to do, it should be the same thing here, balance subject to the interest rate. It should be the same thing as what we're calculating here, but you want to verify it, okay? So that's all I'm trying to say here, okay? All right, so moving on. So now we have the balance subject to interest rate. And where did I get that from? I got it from here, balance subject to interest rate. And we got that, again, if we're doing the average daily balance method, by taking every balance that I had from the first billing cycle to the first day of the billing cycle to the last day of the billing cycle and dividing that by the number of billing cycle days, and this is what I get. So here, that's what this balance subject to interest rate is. Divide that by the number of days of the billing cycle and multiply this times the annual interest rate, and then times number of days in the billing cycle divided by 365. So here, this balance subject to interest rate is going to be divided by this. All that amount just ends up being the $6,545.21. Our annual interest rate is 10.24%, written like this in decimal form. And of course, we're only calculating it for 31 days out of the 365. So this is what the time in fraction of a year is. And we see from that, we get $56.92. And so this means out of the $115.38, $56.92 of it goes towards interest. So that means when we do the subtraction, $58.46 goes to the principal. Okay. Now, other information. We're told here that for number 4, it says examine the terms of your credit card and other revolving debt. What are other charges that the credit card company is applying to your account? Are you receiving a special limited rate for some limited time? And do you have an annual service charge and inactive fee? So for the card that I'm using is in this example, there was an $85 per year membership fee. There was also a late fee up to $35 if the minimum payment was late. And in addition to that, you're told that your annual percentage rate, or APR, could be boosted up. And in this case, it could go as high as 27.24%. And there was no inactivity fee for this card. So for number 5, it says examine the credit card or other revolving debt to see how long it would take for you to pay off your card. And then what steps could you use to pay off this card? And we want to determine the percentage of the principal that you would need to pay down in order to pay off the card in the time frame. Okay. So for here, according to the calculations given in the credit card statement, if a minimum payment is only made, it would take 15 years to pay off the balance. Okay. And that total amount would be paid on the card would actually be $9,836. And this is based off the current new balance. Now, I did not address the part here of saying what steps could you take to pay off this card sooner, and determine the percentage of the principal you would need to pay down the card in order to pay the credit card in the time frame of your choosing. So I didn't do this because that's kind of open-ended, kind of like how I gave before I started going over this example. Let's say if I had a balance of $5,000 and I wanted to pay it off in a year, then of course that's going to be roughly $416.67. Okay, and so here, if I wanted to pay it off in a year, then what that would mean is I need to figure out what is $416.67 divided by 5,000 to find the percentage of the balance I would need to pay off each month. And like I said before, and I'm doing more exact numbers here, if I was to take 416.67 divided by 5,000, I would get 0.08. Yeah, missed that zero there. So 0.083334, okay, which is roughly like 8.33%. So I have to pay 8.33% of that balance each month if I use a time frame of a year to be able to pay that off. Now, of course, if I change this from 12 to 24, then of course that's going to be half of this amount, and of course it'll be half of this percentage rate. So it'll be something like 4.16%. You know, if we extended the time. So again, just gave you an example, but I wanted to leave that open for you to do. Now, part 6, again, is open-ended. And this is just, and I just wrote some stuff here saying my advice would be as follows. Pay off the balance at the end of each month if possible. If carrying a monthly balance, pay at least 2 or 3 times that minimum payment. Keep your current balance to credit limit ratio to be 35% or less. And that's because most of the credit bureaus, most of them are somewhere in between 33% and below. If you have any card that's over that amount of your balance, then your credit score goes down. So I chose 35 because some credit bureaus are a little more lenient than others on that. Okay, and that's basically all I said. So and it says if it all fails, make sure you pay at least the minimum payment on time. So if you got a situation where you don't have a lot of money coming in, but you need to keep your credit good for other things, then you may want to do that. At least pay the minimum payment. things go south when you can't pay the minimum payment. So, but anyway, so that's essentially the calculation part of this project. What you need to do from here is take all this information and put it in a report the way that I suggested that you do it. Taking all the information from parts 1 and 2, using your first body paragraph, 3 and 4, for the second body paragraph, and 5 and 6 in your third body paragraph. And of course, you can pad it with the beginning paragraph with a thesis statement, and of course you can make a conclusion paragraph as well. And so this concludes my explanation of how to do LASA project number 1. I hope that this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.